Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you again for joining us here today. Yesterday we met and I spoke about the dramatic economic impact that the occupation of the Ambassador Bridge is having on our local, our provincial, and our national supply chains and economies. And I'm pleased to be joined today by Flavio Volpe, who is the president of the Automotive Parts Manufacturers Association. Brian Kingston is here. He is the president and CEO of the Canadian Vehicle Manufacturers Association. And Rakesh Naidu is here, president and CEO of the Windsor Essex Regional Chamber of Commerce. And these are individuals who represent in total tens of thousands of Canadians employed in industries that are directly impacted by the ongoing blockade. Now, as I said yesterday, we live in a thriving democracy where the right to peacefully protest is protected. However, the Ambassador Bridge represents a full 1/3 of the trade between Canada and the United States, and the ongoing occupation is having a profound impact on the economic well-being of both the Canadian and American business life and families. A short time ago, Windsor City Council met and has authorized that an injunction be sought from Superior Court to bring about an end to this illegal occupation. The individuals on site are trespassing on municipal property and, if need be, will be removed to allow for the safe and efficient movement of goods across the border. Yesterday, I spoke to the importance of a peaceful resolution, and I still remain hopeful that goal can be achieved. Additional resources are being deployed by the Ontario Provincial Police to help bring about a negotiated solution. And I'm grateful to the Premier, I'm grateful to Sylvia Jones, the Solicitor General, and all those at the Province of Ontario for responding rapidly to the call for support that we issued yesterday. The economic harm that this occupation is having on international trade is not sustainable, and it must come to an end. And as you can expect, this news conference will serve as a clarion call to activists and protesters who may seek to reinforce the occupation to prevent the reopening of the Ambassador Bridge. To those who are thinking about joining the protest, let me just say this: you are not welcome here. We plan to be in front of a judge of the Superior Court as soon as possible, hopefully today. And I'm hopeful that the facts of this application speak clearly to the court about the need for intervention. However, in the hours ahead, neither I or the Windsor Police Service will be able to provide any further operational details to safeguard the security for all involved. But let me just say this: this is a national crisis. And while I don't agree with the individuals occupying the Ambassador Bridge, I do appreciate that they are our neighbors. These are folks who have been so disturbed by the pandemic and impacted by the public health restrictions that they have been motivated to take such a dramatic step. Be it here or on Parliament Hill or in Coutts, Alberta, we need to appreciate that these demonstrators are our fellow Canadians and that they have a fundamental right to their views and their opinions. They don't have the right to affect you or your family's ability to earn a living, and they've gone too far. In the past couple of weeks, watching the events unfold in Ottawa and elsewhere, I've truly tried to put myself into their shoes and understand the situation from their perspective. And sadly, I'm no further ahead in figuring this out. But I do know that as a nation, we have a lot of healing to do as a result of the pandemic, and it's time for that healing to begin. And in Windsor, that healing can only start once the Ambassador Bridge reopens to international traffic. Finally, I want to thank Flavio Volpe and Brian Kingston for joining us and starting this process and bringing about the end to this illegal blockade. And I will turn the floor over to Flavio Volpe, president of the APMA. Flavio?
Thank you, Mayor Dilkens. Thank you for your leadership and your sensitive and thoughtful leadership in a time where neighbors are arguing with each other about the same things, that they all want to be out of this pandemic. We all want to be out of this pandemic. That bridge, the Ambassador Bridge, is the key artery for the automotive parts manufacturers in this province. $50 million worth of parts leave factories in Ontario and Quebec, 35 of which we represent in the Windsor area. And they cross over that bridge to go into cars in Michigan. That bridge also accommodates $50 million worth of parts that come out of Michigan factories, some of which are owned by Canadian companies that come here to go into the vehicles that we make and sell to Canadians and Americans alike. Auto parts manufacturers and auto parts workers understand the weight of the pandemic. We have worked through a very tough market. At the beginning of the pandemic, when nobody had any answers, we converted our facilities and retrained our workers and volunteered to make the PPE and the ventilators and the critical medical goods that Canadians needed at a time when there was a shortage. This is what you do when you're needed to help your fellow Canadians. And I think right now, as understanding as we are about the sentiment for ending the pandemic, there is no argument for holding up the economy of the region, both in Windsor and Ontario and as well in Michigan, to make a point that can be made off the road. And so joining our friends here at the city and at the vehicle manufacturers in seeking the advice of the court on the ending of this blockade and the resumption of business, so that tens of thousands of auto parts workers and tens of thousands of truckers and other service workers that work hand in glove with us can go back to work as soon as possible. Thank you.
Thanks very much, Flavio. I'll turn the floor over to Brian Kingston, the President and CEO of the Canadian Vehicle Manufacturers Association. Brian, thanks for being here.
Thank you, Mayor. And let me start by just thanking you for your leadership during this very difficult time. The Ambassador Bridge is absolutely critical to the automotive manufacturing industry in Canada. As the Mayor outlined, up to 1/3 of our trade with the United States can cross that single bridge. Every single day, $400 million in imports and exports will cross the Ambassador Bridge. And for the automotive industry, which is totally integrated throughout North America, that is a pivotal piece of infrastructure. There is no other bridge or crossing with the capacity to handle the traffic that the Ambassador Bridge does on a daily basis. The auto industry is recovering from pandemic-related shortages and supply chain challenges. Last year, we witnessed production down almost 1 million vehicles in Canada. We're starting to emerge from that. Production is increasing, and now we're faced with this very unfortunate situation where this bridge has been blocked. We are now witnessing production stoppages and reductions at auto assembly plants across Ontario. And just to underline what that means, this industry employs over 100,000 Canadians, and every hour that a plant goes down impacts Canadian jobs. So we are urging for a resolution to this, a return to open trade, an opening of the bridge, and full production again in the auto industry. So thank you, Mayor, for your leadership, and appreciate the opportunity to be here today.
Thanks very much, Brian. Also with us is Rakesh Naidu. He's the President and CEO of the Windsor Essex Regional Chamber of Commerce. And that organization, of course, represents so many businesses locally, and the Chamber will be acting as an intervener in this application. Rakesh, thank you very much for being here.
Thank you, Mayor, and thanks for your leadership and for including us. I'm here to voice my deep concern on the ongoing blockade. This is not only shutting down businesses today, but its implication will be felt in the future as well. For the 4th day, operations of the businesses in the Windsor-Essex region has been disrupted. Several businesses have closed, thereby impacting thousands of employees. At a time when businesses were already severely challenged, the blockade is pushing several businesses over the edge. We've heard from several business owners, and they've expressed their frustration and helplessness. It has taken a Herculean effort on part of businesses to stay afloat despite the challenges in the last 2 years. This blockade is significantly exacerbating their already fragile situation. The Windsor-Essex region is the automotive capital of Canada and has thrived because of international trade. Windsor-Essex has over 1,000 manufacturing companies employing over 40,000 people. 90% of these companies are export-oriented, and 90% of the exports are to US. The Ambassador Bridge is an important infrastructure that facilitates this trade between US and Canada. And as you heard, $300 to $400 million worth of goods crosses the border via the Ambassador Bridge. There are thousands of businesses on both sides of the border that rely on the free and timely movement of goods. Large OEMs like Stellantis, Ford, GM, and others, and their feeder plants are based on both sides of the border. These businesses, which employ tens of thousands of employees, are successful because of the tightly integrated supply chain that straddles the border. Just-in-time manufacturing requires that parts and components arrive at the manufacturing plant in time for them to be processed further and assembled. The blockade has disrupted this model and has resulted in several businesses closing down. It is not just the manufacturing sector, but the ancillary industries and several SMEs that depend on these large operations are also affected. We have heard from a well-known non-automotive business here that employs over 1,500 people. They unfortunately had to idle their operations and send home all their employees. They're in a state of distress because not only are they incurring over 3 million in daily losses, but they will also have to further pay penalties for not being able to deliver the products in time to the customers. Windsor Essex has a thriving agriculture and food processing sector with nearly 8,000 employees working in more than 100 food and beverage processing companies and 1,500 growers. Approximately 80% of Ontario's greenhouse vegetable acreage is in Windsor Essex, and over 70% of our farmers' produce is exported to US. Produce grown in the greenhouses are perishable commodity and needs to be transported in time. We fear that the blockade will lead to a significant amount of produce being wasted. Unfortunately, it will add to grocery shortage and already high food inflation. While the current impact is painful, the thing that worries us the most is the long-term impact of the blockade. Our companies have expressed their concern about the challenge of retaining their business with customers in US. Many have stated the huge disadvantage they are likely to face when bidding for new business across the border. And this is a major concern for Windsor Essex region, where majority of the business comes from across the border. Canada, and specifically Windsor Essex, cannot afford to be seen as an unreliable partner in the supply chain. If the American businesses decide to take business away from Canadian partners, it will be a major jolt and the tremors will be felt all across Canada. Time is ticking. Every hour that goes by is costing us over 13.5 million in trade and irreparable damage to our reputation as a reliable trading partner. Trade has played a vital role in building this region and the country's economy, and it has taken decades and decades of hard work. We are at a high risk now of losing it all. We just cannot let this happen. We need to do everything in our power to remove the blockade at the earliest. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Rakesh. Flavio, Brian, thank you very much for your strong advocacy, and I'll turn the floor over to Dana to moderate questions and answers. Dana?
Thank you very much, Mayor Dilkens, and thank you, panelists. At this time, members of the media, please take a moment to use the raise hand function in Zoom to queue for a question, and a reminder that you must, if not indicated inside your Zoom name, use the chat to indicate the name of your outlet so that you can be called upon properly, please. The first question comes from Paul Thera, Wall Street Journal. Paul, please go ahead, enable your microphone.
Good afternoon. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Hi, Paul, we can hear you.
Okay. Mayor, I guess the question I have is, are you going to have sufficient law enforcement officers if you succeed in getting this injunction? And how many have you requested, and can they be here in time to execute the court order if it's successful?
So all very good questions. And yes, yesterday afternoon, an official request went out to the Ontario Provincial Police through the Solicitor General and to the federal government through Minister Bill Blair, asking for both RCMP and OPP support. The province of Ontario responded immediately. There are many members of the OPP who are on the ground right now. There are more coming. There are public order units also coming to the region to help enforce peace and order here on the streets. And the goal is we're not going to put anyone into harm's way. If we don't have enough people, that would be a very difficult thing to try and enforce an injunction. So we're going to make sure we have the right number of people here to be able to enforce the injunction. And if we can't gain compliance voluntarily, then other measures will have to be taken.
Do you have a project? Yeah, I know you probably want this as soon as possible, and you still have to go before the court. Are you confident you can get before a judge today on this?
We're fairly confident that a judge will hear our request for an injunction today, and we hope to have an answer soon thereafter. And then police will be in a position to have the injunction in their possession, and we'll work with police to enforce that injunction.
Thank you very much for the question. The next question comes from Rob Maloney at TV News Detroit. Rob, please go ahead, enable your microphone.
Yeah, Mr. Mayor, the question becomes, what is the status now in terms of traffic coming into the States? We know that the traffic going into Canada is not there, but the traffic into the States, there was a negotiation yesterday in an attempt to try and allow that traffic, and now it seems to have stopped, maybe moving. I'm not certain. Where are you in that? And is that kind of a negotiation something that you're still working on in advance of your hearing?
Yeah, Rod, thanks for that question. The police will always try and negotiate a solution here. That is sort of the first thing that they're trying to do. The unfortunate situation in which we find ourselves is this is very much a leaderless movement. And so there are multiple parties who believe that they represent the group when in fact no one really represents this group. And so a great example is the one you just mentioned, where there was access to the Ambassador Bridge through the lane off of Wyandotte Street in the city of Windsor. And that had been going on for several days. And then last night, a group came and took siege of that entrance as well, contrary to the agreement that had been negotiated previously. And so the protesters themselves are not cohesive. They're certainly frustrating efforts by police to negotiate and be sensible through this. And, you know, it just further exacerbates a problem when you're trying to work sensibly to find a resolution, yet you have parties on the other side that will agree in the short term and then change their mind very quickly thereafter.
Follow up. Rod, follow up.
Yeah, I'm fine. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Our next question comes from Katerina Georgieva at CBC. Katerina, just a moment, please. I've misplaced your. Katerina, I'm not sure if you're still online. I will look in again and come back to you if you're still available. The next question from Angelo Aversa, CTV. Angelo, please go ahead.
Thank you. My first question is overall economic impact this is having. I know some of you already spoke about the auto sector. Rakesh, you mentioned the food industry as well. Do you have a number, I guess, on the economic impact this has had over the last 4 days locally?
Well, listen, I'll start off by saying overall, the Ambassador Bridge carries around $400 million per day of goods back and forth. And that would include, of course, perishable goods from the greenhouse sector, automotive vehicles and parts, and then everything else in between. And so every day that this crossing is closed, there is a $400 million impact to the economies in the United States and in Canada. But Flavio, Brian, you may have more discrete numbers with respect to your own organizations.
Thank you, Brian. I'll just take a quick shot at this. Every day we don't deliver parts, that's $50 million worth of parts that are in that 401 corridor that don't have a destination. So we don't operate. And that's 96,000 employees that make those. And about the numbers are probably around 35% for the Windsor and the immediate region.
Just to add some perspective from the manufacturing side, the industry employs over 100,000 Canadians, the majority of that in Ontario, and motor vehicles and parts are Canada's second largest goods export, with the Ambassador Bridge being the key conduit. So the economic impact is significant.
Any other panelists? Follow up?
Follow-up to Mayor Dilkens. When we factor in police resources we've had to use these last few days, other resources the city has potentially had to use to manage this blockade, do you have a cost that would affect the city?
Yeah, I don't know yet. I can tell you that we are tracking all of the expenses in a separate account, so we will be able to provide you that number at the right time. And the resolution that City Council approved today also called on asking for financial support from both the provincial and federal governments as we navigate our way through this situation.
Thank you.
Thanks very much. Back to you, Katerina Georgieva at the CBC. Go ahead.
All right, can you hear me?
Yes.
Excellent. I just wanted to get more of a specific sense of the timeline this evening. So the hope is to get the court to grant this injunction potentially in the next several hours. And then this evening it'll be in the hands of police. So how long are we going to allow for kind of a peaceful negotiation to address that injunction as before additional measures are taken?
Well, I know that's the big question. Everyone wants to know, when are you going to move in? And we hope not to have to move in. We hope we can get the protesters to see the light of day and recognize that the easiest way out of this is for them to voluntarily get in their cars and drive away. But police will be working as they have been for the past several days through their operational plan to decide when the most expedient time is to move forward.
Follow up.
And a follow-up question, I just have to ask about something that happened last night. I'm just wondering if you can address that there were reports of tow trucks being nearby the demonstrations, but then those tow trucks were not to be seen after that. And I'm just wondering if you can address if there was a plan yesterday to go in with tow trucks and if something impeded that plan.
Yeah, I'm not aware of the situation of which you speak. So I'm sorry, that would have to be a better question for police.
Okay, thank you.
Thanks very much, Katerina. Our next question comes from David Welch at Bloomberg Detroit. David, please go ahead, enable your microphone. David, I see you're unmuted. Can you speak? I think David's having some technical difficulties. We'll come back to David and try him again shortly. The next question is from David Kennedy, Automotive News Canada. David, please go ahead, enable your microphone.
Hi, I just have a question for Mayor Dilkens. I'm just wondering, obviously there's been a little bit of uncertainty, it seems, about whether or not the protest has been on federal, municipal, or provincial land or roads. I'm just wondering if that has slowed down, any action taken against the protesters.
No, it hasn't slowed anything down. The vast majority of the protest, as I understand, is on actually municipal property. And so municipal police have been working with counterparts at the OPP, and all levels of government are talking and trying to find solutions and providing resources that will help end this particular situation. And so there's no doubt, and I've heard comments, including by our federal transportation minister, that Huron Church Road, the road leading to the Ambassador Bridge, is simply a municipal road. Well, that is technically true. I don't think anyone who understands the situation here would call Huron Church a run-of-the-mill municipal road. And that is why from the very beginning, we've been calling on both the federal and provincial governments for support, because we know that their intervention will absolutely be required to end this event once and for all.
Follow up.
And just another question for Flavio or Brian, likely. Obviously, one of the things that's come out of this is, parts haven't made it to plants in time. Are we going to need a rethink of the just-in-time delivery model?
No, David, I think what we're looking at here is a singular event. There is a very reliable infrastructure between the two countries, and we make cars very well together, and we're building another bridge as well. And so both levels of government in both countries are heavily invested in increasing that integration.
Thanks very much for the question. Go ahead.
Sorry, just to build off what Flavio said, the just-in-time model is highly efficient, highly effective, and proven to be extremely successful. The auto industry is a leader in terms of logistics and supply chain management. This is an unprecedented event, and I don't anticipate this will change the way that the supply chain functions going forward.
Thank you for the question. The next one comes from Rusty Thompson at AM 800. Rusty, please go ahead.
This is a question for everybody. As we look at what's going on, and so many eyes are on what's taking place in Windsor. We've talked a lot about the economic impact. What do you believe the impact could be long term if this drags on too long for the reputation of this area and the country and the province as a trading partner?
I'll take a quick shot at that. I think Windsor's reputation as a partner, especially on the manufacturing end, has been crystallized over the last 120 years. I don't think a singular event is going to change that. I do think that if we don't take some action here, like we're doing today, to clear the border, I think it may have some effect at least in the short to midterm, on whether new investments would favor Windsor over the other side of the bridge, unless we all show a resolve. And I think you're seeing industry and government and labor and academia, everybody on side for that. So we'll get through this.
Yeah, from the chamber's perspective, this needs to be resolved at the earliest. There are current implications. Clearly there are several plants that have shut down. Thousands of employees are laid off. So this needs to be addressed immediately. However, for the future, the concerns that we have are, what will the American customers, the American clients think of the situation? And will this lead to them rethink about the supply chain that extends into Canada? And Windsor Essex is a very important part of that supply chain. So we've heard from our businesses, they've expressed concern because even today, they've got products that are sitting that needs to be shipped. The shipping cost has increased several times since the situation has escalated. So it is making it unviable for many of them, to ship the products as it stands today. But for future, their concerns are that the American customers may look the other way and not want to have a concern like this come up in the future. Having said that, this is the first time, something like this has happened. Our relationship with our US counterparts is long-standing, and we have proven over decades that this thing works. Our supply chain is highly integrated and can continue to be very successful in the future, and we hope it stays that way. So the sooner this is addressed, the better it will be, and it will repose the trust back into the system.
Follow-up?
I guess, as we're seeking an injunction to try and end this situation, is there any way that that we can anybody walks away happy from the situation, as much as maybe the protest is removed? Are all the issues still lingering? The only resolution is the fact that maybe that the traffic is flowing again.
Well, it's a good question, but a tough one to answer. And I think if you go back to the beginning of this protest, everyone very much understood that this was a subset of truckers in a convoy protesting a Canadian federal rule that required people to be vaccinated to return to Canada and to provide proof of the same. Within a week of that rule going in place and that law becoming effective, the United States implemented the exact same legislation. So even if the original protesters are successful in getting what they want, which is our government removing the restriction to come home to Canada, they still can't drive their trucks over to the United States unless they're fully vaccinated, and they'd have to provide proof. And so I can tell you, at least the folks that are on the ground here, I can tell you from the comments in the news media and the reports from police, there is a variety of issues that have been expressed. Some of them no doubt relate to masks and vaccine mandates. But this has moved more into an anti-government protest. This has moved into people who today are saying that they're here on site protesting because of climate change. And so this has taken on a life of its own that is way above and beyond how the original trucker convoy movement started. And so it is a leaderless group. There is no cohesive issue or issues on which they all surround and rally around. And that is why, we can't just let this lawlessness continue to happen. We respect that everyone has the right to protest. It's a hallmark of democracy. That is okay. What is not okay is choking off the busiest border crossing between the United States and Canada and affecting tens of thousands of families and their ability to put food on their table.
Thank you very much for the question. David Welch of Bloomberg Detroit typed his question into the chat. It reads, how far are you willing to go if the injunction is granted? Do you have resources available for mass arrests and towing of 100 or so vehicles?
Well, listen, some of that is really related to police and police operations, so I would defer to the police chief for a response on that. I can tell you that the state of Michigan and the governor's office directly have offered to send over heavy equipment to help remove vehicles, to provide security. They've offered to do whatever is required to help end this blockade as well. And so we have partners on both sides of the border who are willing to help, and we will absolutely use any of the resources made available to us to take advantage and help end this situation. We want to do it peacefully. That's the ultimate goal, and we hope the protesters understand that a court injunction has to be enforced at some point, and police are the ones to do that.
Thank you for the question, David. The next question comes from Robert Balsteller, Automotive News Canada. Robert, please go ahead, enable your microphone.
Hello, can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay, thank you. Mr. Nadeau has spoken about this blockade further eroding, or the possibility of it further eroding confidence in Canada as a place to do business and to invest. Beyond solving this immediate problem, what else do you think is necessary to restore that relationship? And I'm interested in hearing what other panelists have to say on that as well. Thank you.
I'm happy to address that, Robert. As you are very well aware, competition for new automotive investment is extremely intense, particularly right now as the industry is going through really a once-in-a-generation transformation to electrification. So when issues like this arise that erode confidence in the efficiency and the reliability of the Canadian transportation network, it is a worry. And this is not the first event like this we've witnessed. We've had other issues with our transportation supply chain over the past couple of years that have eroded confidence. So it is really important for a country like Canada, which is export dependent and depends particularly on the United States. We must have reliable and resilient trade infrastructure that is not subject to a single blockade causing this type of disruption. And that will be absolutely important going forward as we seek to win new investment in Canada.
Rakesh?
Yeah, so, we've had a great history, over 100 years of cooperation and collaboration, some amazing companies on both sides of the border. They know how to do business with each other. The supply chain is very robust in the past. It's highly integrated. So we know how to do things together. And remember, North America is competing with other jurisdictions, whether that's Asia, whether that is Europe. So we have competition. Unless North America as a whole competes together, we'll be left behind. So it's in the interest of US, Mexico, and Canada to work together. So yes, after this incident is put behind us, we'll figure out a way to work together as we've done, in decades in the past. And we need each other. Canada brings a significant amount of capabilities and strength to the table. Our companies here are some of the best. We have of the top 10 mold tool and die companies in North America, 5 of them are in the Windsor Essex area. We know how to get things done. We know how to make things. So we are a very, very important part of the supply chain. So we will figure this out. Americans will figure this out, how to work with us, and so will Mexicans. So this, though it is right now, it's putting things at risk, but as things settle down, we'll figure out a way to work together and collaborate together in the future as well.
Let me just add one piece here. I think as much as this is an acute event for us and that we need to address it immediately, there are events that are happening throughout the world during the last 2 years of the pandemic, including a lot on the other side of the border. Countries don't make sourcing decisions. Companies make sourcing decisions. And so the fundamentals of buying stuff and selling stuff to Canadians through this region over that bridge is unaffected writ large. And part of the American upcoming rivalry with China in every single industrial sector includes a very strong partnership with Canada. We just have to do our part and show them that the tens of thousands of people represented by the panel here are the Windsor region and its economic engine and its heart, and that a disaffected few who may have the right to protest and hold other opinions, no problem, don't actually have the right to stop this region from thriving. And hopefully the court will give us some guidance there.
Yeah, all good points. And I would just add that although this appears to be a discrete Canadian event in Ottawa and Alberta and Windsor and in Quebec and sometimes in Toronto, I remind everyone that France is passing legislation to ban truck convoys like this. The United States is preparing for a trucker convoy at the Super Bowl this coming week. And so this is a movement that has started a bit of a pain around the world that everyone's dealing with. And I would suspect that, a 5 or 6 day event out of a 120-year relationship would not be fatal.
Thank you for the question. The next question, final question, is typed in from Dave Battigello at the Windsor Star. Describe what an injunction is and what powers will it grant Windsor Police to act?
Well, listen, I think an injunction, as we've seen in strikes and many other places, is a court order requiring someone to do something or to stop doing something. And so an application through affidavit has to be made to court. A judge has to review, and he can obviously ask questions of the parties, which I expect that he will do. And ultimately, it's a document that can be given to police to move forward and enforce and move upon. And so we'll see what comes out the other end of this particular application, but I'm sure hopeful that the court approves this request for an injunction and that police are in a better position to move forward with enforcement if enforcement is required.
Thank you, Dave, for the question, and thank you to all members of the media that participated today, as well as our panelists. Mayor Drew, any final remarks?
Thanks very much, Brian and Flavio and Rakesh. Thank you for your leadership on this and your advocacy, and together we will get through this and get our very important economy humming once again. Thanks very much for being here.